Today, we're putting on our detective hats to solve one of the biggest mysteries in the construction world. You know the scene. A massive project runs late, and the big question is, who's to blame? And more importantly, who foots the bill?
So, here's how we're going to crack this case. First, we'll head to the scene of the crime, where the blame game always starts. Then we'll open up the detective's toolkit and look at the official rulebooks. We'll get into the two main schools of thought, observing versus modeling, before digging into the top 4 methods in the field. After that, something absolutely crucial, the cardinal rule of evidence. And finally, we'll reach the final verdict on how to pick the right tool for the job.
All right, so this is the big one, right? This is the question that kicks off every single investigation into a project delay. And believe me, the stakes could not be higher. We're talking millions, sometimes even billions of dollars, all riding on the answer to this one question.
Now, before we can even begin to solve the mystery, we have to understand the heart of the project. It's called the critical path. The best way to think about it is like a long chain of dominoes. It's the longest sequence of essential tasks, and if just one of those dominoes gets delayed, the whole line stops, and the entire project finish date gets pushed back. This is ground zero for our investigation.
Okay, first stop, the crime scene. See, when a huge project grinds to a halt, there's rarely a single smoking gun. It's usually this tangled mess of things. Maybe the owner changed their mind, maybe there were contractor issues, or maybe it was something totally unforeseen, like crazy weather or supply chain nightmares. The detective's first job is just to start untangling that web.
You know, every detective needs a rule book, a code to live by. In our world, the two heavy hitters are the SCL protocol and AACE's recommended practice. But don't think of them as competing manuals. It's better to see them as a team. One gives us the big picture strategy, while the other provides the super detailed technical playbook.
And I love how this slide frames these two guides. The SCL protocol, that's your seasoned detective, the philosopher who works on guiding principles and just plain common sense. AC, on the other hand, is the forensic scientist in the lab giving you this incredibly detailed technical blueprint for exactly how to run the analysis. A real expert uses both to build a case that's absolutely rock solid.
Okay, so with our rulebooks in hand, our detective faces a fundamental choice. It's a real fork in the road. Do you analyze what actually happened by looking at the evidence as it is, or do you build a simulation to test what could have happened if things went differently?
This lays it out perfectly. The observational approach is like reviewing the security footage. You're looking at the hard facts, the record of what really happened. The modeled approach, though, is more like creating a computer simulation. You're asking what if. You actually plug a delay event into the schedule or pull one out to prove its exact impact. Both are totally valid, but they answer very different questions. All right, now that we get the two big philosophies, let's open up that toolkit and look at the 4 most common methods the delay detective uses to actually crack the case. These are the real workhorses of forensic schedule analysis. First up, we've got the most straightforward observational technique out there: as planned versus as built. It's simple. You just take the original plan and lay it on top of what actually happened. You can instantly see the differences, right? Foundations were 15 days late, steel was 20 days late. It's a great starting point, but here's the catch. It struggles to explain the why, especially when you have multiple delays happening at once.
So, to get a more detailed look, detectives use what's called a windows analysis. This method basically chops the project's timeline into smaller pieces, or windows, usually month by month. By looking at how the critical path changed within each little window, you get a much clearer, evolving story. It's like watching the project unfold chapter by chapter, instead of just reading the last page. It's a really trusted method.
Okay, now we're shifting gears into a modeled technique. This is time impact analysis, or TIA. This is where we start running simulations. The analyst grabs a clean schedule from right before a delay happened. Then they build a little mini network of activities to represent that delay, what the pros call a fragnet. They plug that fragnet into the schedule to measure the exact impact. TIA is pretty much the industry gold standard for proving that a specific event caused a specific delay.
And our final method is basically the mirror image of a TIA. It's called the collapsed as-built, and it works backwards. The analyst takes the final, delayed schedule and digitally removes a specific delay from it. The whole point is to prove when the project would have finished, but for that one event. It tells a really powerful story, but it can be controversial because, well, you're essentially creating a hypothetical past that never actually happened.
So, we've just gone through some pretty sophisticated tools, but I gotta tell you, here comes the most important part.
Because honestly, none of those methods mean a thing without good evidence. The entire case rises or falls on the quality of the proof you put into it.
This right here is the golden rule. It is the absolute law of the land in delay claims. You can build the most beautiful, complex model in the world, but if you can't back it up with contemporaneous records, documents that were created at the time the events were happening, then it's just a nice theory. The records are what turn your story into fact.
So what kind of evidence are we talking about? Well, it's all this stuff. We need the official schedule updates, the daily reports from the guys on site, the minutes from project meetings where people were talking about these issues, emails, letters, and even progress photos and drone videos. Without this paper trail, the detective, well, they've got no case.
All right, let's bring this all home. We've got the methods, we understand the absolute need for evidence. So how does an expert actually choose the right tool to deliver a final verdict, one that's going to hold up under intense scrutiny?
And this table just nails it. The truth is, there's no single best method. The choice is driven almost entirely by one thing: the quality of your project records. If you've got amazing detailed records with frequent updates, you can use the really powerful dynamic methods like a Windows analysis or a TIA. But if your records are a mess or missing, you're forced to rely on the simpler, more retrospective methods. In the end, the evidence dictates the method. Period.
And that leaves us with a final question to chew on. As technology like AI and digital twins starts to create a perfect, flawless record of everything that happens on a project, what happens to our delay detective? Does the job become obsolete? Or will their skill in interpreting that mountain of perfect data and telling the human story behind the numbers become more critical than it has ever been? That's the real mystery for the future.